Chapter 4 King Harkinian. If anyone had been standing on the highest balcony of the North Palace of Hyrule, they would have seen a small tornado appear out of nowhere. It came without warning, and was not much taller than a man as it touched down on the tiled floor, blowing portraits off the wall before vanishing a moment later. When the tornado was gone, the green-skinned form of Ganondorf was left in its place, slipping the recorder back into his pocket and brushing his red hair from his face before starting forward. This particular balcony led into Princess Zelda's bedchamber, obviously unoccupied since the princess in question was currently chained to his throne deep inside the labyrinth of Spectacle Rock. It was also where one of his spies, a small winged Keys to be exact, had discovered the note addressed to her father, King Harkinian. It was a good thing, too, since without it, the princess might have been able to reach Arcadia without the sorcerer even realizing she was gone. This would have been bad for him, since even though Ganondorf had more than enough allies on the outskirts of Hyrule to overwhelm the kingdom, he was not prepared to face the armies of a second kingdom at the same time. Well, not without possessing the Triforce of Wisdom, anyway. After that, he would love nothing more than to massacre Arcadia's forces, as well as personally skull-drag that ridiculous Prince Facade across every inch of swampland in both kingdoms. Aside from Zelda, there was nothing else in this room that interested him, and he already had her, so he walked across to the large door on the far side. It opened up into a hallway where the castle servants were going about their morning routine, and like good little workers, they kept their heads down as to keep from bothering their betters. This was the way he preferred the people of this land to conduct themselves around him, and soon it wouldn't be just the servants that did so, but also the nobles, and even the king himself. "Ganondorf!" a voice to match his thoughts rang out. "Ganondorf, my friend! I was hoping you were in the castle!" Turning around, the sorcerer sighed as he saw the portly and white-bearded form of King Harkinian rushing down the hallway towards him. The king was so focused on reaching him that he ran right into one of the servants who was carrying a tray of dishes. This caused an intense racket as they and the dishes fell to the floor, but instead of punishing the servant for his incompetence, the king actually remained on the floor to help him pick up the pieces. Then, to top it off, as if helping wasn't enough of an insult to a ruler, Harkinian actually apologized to the servant before continuing on his way. "Ganondorf, my friend," the king repeated urgently once he reached him. "I must speak to you at once." "Of course, your highness," Ganondorf replied sympathetically. "I may not be from Hyrule, but I am here to serve you in any way I can." Instead of explaining further, Harkinian looked around nervously, as if to make sure that no one was around to hear what he had to say, and apparently he was not satisfied. Grabbing the sorcerer's arm, he led him down the hall and onto the staircase that went to the lower levels, still not saying a word by the time they reached the ground floor. Some of the servants gave them puzzled looks as they rushed by, but a quick, angry glare from Ganondorf would stop this easily enough. But still, the king led on until they entered a part of the castle he had never been into before. "I apologize for acting so strangely," Harkinian explained as they kept going. "But we must discuss a matter of grave importance, and it can only be shared with those I know I can trust beyond a shadow of a doubt. I tell you, it is a good thing that I am such an excellent judge of character." "You certainly are, your highness," Ganondorf replied while rolling his eyes. "You certainly are." It was a much older wing, and very seldom used, judging by the cobwebs and thick layers of dust. There were also no servants about, and the sudden silence made the echoes of their footsteps seem especially loud. More and more dust was kicked up by their feet, as they moved through room after abandoned room. There was plenty of light coming in through the unwashed windows as they moved through one last door that the king had to unlock with a key from around his neck, and now they entered a small chamber that contained... "Zelda!" Ganondorf exclaimed with genuine surprise. At the center of the room there was a small shrine which was set atop a short set of pyramid stairs, and on top of the shrine, sleeping on a bed that was surrounded by a row of tall candles, was Princess Zelda. Wait, no. Her face and body were right, but her hair was the wrong color, being a fair blonde instead of the dark brown. But other than that one small difference, this sleeping girl was just as young and beautiful as the princess he had recently captured. "What?" King Harkinian asked as he looked. "Oh no, my friend, this is not my daughter. Actually, quite the opposite. My daughter is named after her, but this is actually my ancestor from several generations ago. I am afraid that I don't know the whole story, but she was cursed by an evil magician, and has been sleeping ever since. It must have been a whopper of a spell, too, because I heard that my great-great-great-grandfather once tried to use the Triforce to free her. When we had both of them, this is. But even the unified wisdom and power couldn't do it." That is hard to believe," the sorcerer replied as he moved closer. "Sleeping that long, yet not aging, and not even both Triforces could free her?" Ganondorf moved up to the shrine and climbed the stairs so that he was standing over the sleeping young woman. She was breathing softly, and her skin was warm to the touch when he placed his hand on her cheek. Unlike the rest of this whole wing of the castle, there was no dust on her or the shrine, and the candles, although burning brightly, showed no signs of the wax melting. "Perhaps someday she will wake," the king continued as Ganondorf came back down. "But right now we have a more urgent matter to attend to. You see, my daughter did not come to breakfast this morning, and no one seems to know where she has gone. My first thought was to ask Impa if perhaps she had gone riding or something, but then I discovered that Impa was gone as well. They have traveled the kingdom together before, but never without telling me, so where could they have gone?" "Your Highness, do not distress yourself," the sorcerer replied. "Surely you can remember what it was like to be young and impulsive. I am certain that you did not choose to inform your parents about everything you did at that age, am I correct?" This thought seemed to calm the king for a moment, and he even chuckled about whatever was going on inside his head. It was important that Ganondorf keep him calm enough to stop him from ordering a kingdom-wide search by the army, but also just nervous enough to eventually seek guidance from the Triforce of Wisdom. This was a delicate balance to be sure, but he was confident that it could be done. "You may be right, my friend," Harkinian continued. "Why, at her age, I was constantly sneaking into this very castle. I would avoid the guards as I moved to the upper levels, and then I would have the bushel of flowers in my hand as I used a rope to swing across to Princess Midna's bedchambers, and then we would... Well, I just hope that Zelda's moral standards are higher than her mother's were at that age." "There, you see?" Ganondorf said reassuringly while putting a hand on his shoulder. "Nothing at all to worry about, is there, your highness? Even if she were doing something along those lines, you would be able to catch any young man who tried the same thing. But then again, she left the castle, so who knows what someone descended from you would be getting into. Not to be rude, but she could be out spending time with peasants, or maybe causing trouble in youthful rebellion. Not that I believe your daughter would ever steal from a shop or join a gang of forest brigands, but as you said, no one knows." The calm had faded from the king's face, and had been replaced by a look of concern as these possibilities ran through his head. It was nearly impossible for Ganondorf to keep himself from laughing while Harkinian's imagination tortured him. And if he could keep this up for a few weeks, the king was sure to try to use the Triforce, since Zelda was unlikely to reappear anytime soon. But then it was Ganondorf's turn to be surprised when the king suddenly turned to the shrine and pushed a hidden switch. "I know someone who might give us some insight," he explained as the shrine began to move. "You have been a good friend to me these past few months, Ganondorf, so I feel safe enough to use the Triforce of Wisdom while you are here." The sorcerer's mouth hung open in pure shock that King Harkinian would do such a thing, at least this quickly. Ganondorf had created a whole plan for spending as much as a month filling the king's head with a mixture of calm and anxiety until he was at the breaking point, but as the shrine with the sleeping other Zelda slid across the floor to reveal a hidden compartment, he couldn't help but smile as he realized that this was no longer necessary. His head was filled with visions of how nice the shimmering green Triforce would look next to his red one, and of course, he was going to have to break the king's neck in order to grab it, but then his fantasy was shattered when the shrine stopped moving to reveal an empty compartment. "What is this?" Ganondorf asked as he looked around inside. "The Triforce of Wisdom!" King Harkinian shouted in horror. "It's gone!"